When a scientist does an experiment, they start the process by making an observation. Observation means receiving knowledge of the world through our senses, hearing, sight, smell, and making a statement that is undeniable. For example, some Lingnan students are falling asleep in morning classes. After making an observation, a scientist will ask questions about their observation. Usually, the most important question is why. Why are some Lingnan students falling asleep in morning classes? A scientist will then make a hypothesis about their observation. Remember, a hypothesis is a statement that tries to explain the observation. It will sometimes include a prediction, and it will always require further research. For example, if Lingnan students slept more, they would not fall asleep in morning classes. However, each hypothesis a scientist makes has two parts: the null hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis. The null hypothesis is the past assumption about the world that the scientist wants to test. The null hypothesis of our example would be that Lingnan students are getting enough sleep. The alternative hypothesis is a statement about the world if the null hypothesis is found to be incorrect or not supported by the experiment. The alternative hypothesis, for our example, is that Lingnan students aren't getting enough sleep. After determining what their null and alternative hypotheses are, the scientist will use an experimental procedure to collect data that will either support or oppose the null hypothesis. This is called hypothesis testing. If the data supports the null hypothesis, then the alternative hypothesis that students are not getting enough sleep must be rejected. If the data does not support the null hypothesis, then the null hypothesis that students are getting enough sleep is rejected. However, just because the null hypothesis is rejected does not necessarily mean that the alternative hypothesis is true. The alternative hypothesis is only accepted as true when further research is done. In a later video, we'll talk in more detail about how to decide when to reject your null or alternative hypothesis. But for now, just remember, every hypothesis has two parts.